The doors of the Abbey swing open as the Vestal, Junia, responds to a rather quiet and unexpected knock on the door. As they open to the outside, a short boy with dark brown hair and a seagull on his shoulder quietly begs for shelter and food. The Vestal motions him to enter, asking for his name and where he came from. He introduced himself as Eugene and falls silent as the memories of his past come flooding back. Memories of his life on the streets of the capital return to him. The cold winter nights he spent shivering away, the blazing summer days spent sweating in an alley, and all the days in between spent alone, without a mother, father, or sibling in sight. Far away from the terrible orphanages, he subsided on scraps and begging the passers-by, a life he truly didn't miss, and left behind the moment he turned 10, rushing to lie about his age to get hired as a deckhand on the first freighter he saw. The life on the street he had traded in was barely worse than his job on the ship he had signed onto. He traded in nights on the streets for days of grueling, back-breaking labor, days without food for barely edible slop, and worst of all, he traded in the disdainful stares from strangers for harsh beatings and curses from both his captain and crew. After they had left the port, a random tropical harbor, he had suffered countless beatings in the following weeks, beatings which drove him to hide away in the cargo hold, crying deeply from the fear of the crew finding him to once again beat him for their own amusement. Unbeknownst to him, they picked up a rather strange idol from the harbor they had stopped at. He didn't notice it, but it certainly noticed him. Its strange pagan magic recognized his frailty, his fear, his hopelessness, which was just the right combination to release a blessing onto him. As the captain came down the stairs, his intentions clear to beat the poor boy for misbehaving, the idol infused the child with its blessings, granting Eugene a form that would protect him from pain and muscles to defend himself from his attackers. In a quick reflex, the boy lifted his arms to shield his face, trying to protect himself from the captain's abuse. In his frightened terror, he transformed for the first time as his frail hands gave way to mighty claws, and his skin gave way to rough shell. His claws clamped down in reflex and severed the captain's arm clean off. The towering crab now stood in shock, above the howling, bleeding lump of a person that was once his captain. Terrified at his own new power, Eugene quickly fled, storming off the ship to the horror of all the sailors on deck. The hulking crustacean plummeted deep into the dark blue ocean, far away from all the fear and pain of the past 3 years. He started his long march on the ocean floor to the nearest shoreline. As luck, or curse, would have it, that shore just happened to be the hamlet's shore, where he was joined by a curious but friendly seagull he later named Imbra. As he snapped back to reality, he recounted what he was comfortable speaking of to Junia, and was rather taken aback by her kindness and understanding. He hadn't felt this safe in a very, very long time. Deciding the church was safe enough to stay in, the young boy came to listen to what they had to say. He heard of the word of the light, met the stalwart crusader Reynaud, heard the sermons and learned how to read by the guidance of the Book of Light. He quickly immersed himself in religion to calm his fears.
I have abandoned all that isn't prayer.
He became quite attached to Junia in this process, seeing her almost as a surrogate mother.
No! Please! Not me! Please! Junia, help me!
His low self-worth and inherent fear of the world was quelled largely by his newfound faith.
The light will protect me. Junia said so. Only the light comforts me.
He slowly but surely grew more open to strangers, and even befriended the local abomination Bigby. As the cursed man taught the young boy how to control his abilities, they developed a student-mentor relationship. Although his best friend in the hamlet is a stubborn, explosively tempered girl who also understands the pain of abuse. And of all of his friends, he spends most of his waking hours with, be it pranking the sailors in the harbor, or simply playing games around the hamlet. They are nigh inseparable from each other. However, when he does get sent on expeditions for the Holy Light, his crab powers are certainly a useful skill for his allies. His protective shell shields them from attacks, and techniques he copied from the Cove's Unka spares him the trauma of bloodshed, while keeping him a force to be reckoned with. His services as a human to his teams are more passive in nature, as the Vestals spent time teaching him the art of healing, while his old trusty bell rings clear to signal when to advance, hold back, or target a specific enemy. He also takes with him a keg of rum, laced with medicine to soothe the aching and bruised bodies of him and his party. His possessions are few, but they certainly aid him in those he aids in combat. His many waxes and polishes keep his shell in peak condition, while the shining sexton he took from the ship aids them in navigating at night. So only now, years after his life on the cold streets, he found himself a new life in the hamlet, one that seems to be much more enjoyable than his old one. While most people see the hamlet as a cursed place, this small, malnourished child sees the hamlet as a treasured home, worthy to be protected and mended to its former glory.